Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Ahmad again for Eduonix, and this is our course beginning Jenkins. This is section 3 of the course, and this section I opted to call it the foundation. It is a rather short section, however it is going to handle some of the foundation pillars or the foundation basics of Jenkins that we are going to discuss each one of them in more detail throughout this class. So this section is very important for you to grasp. You have to be very careful while reviewing these. As we said, it is going to be the basis for the rest of this class. So let's get started. Okay, so it's time for us to create our first Jenkins job. And our first job will be very simple, just to demonstrate the basics. We will create a job that adds a new file in the home directory with the famous phrase hello world, which is very famous among programmers and other coders. In each and every textbook that I have seen so far that teaches programming or even web development or code of any type, they use the hello world as a demonstration for the basic thing that the application or that the code can do. Just a phrase that gets printed in a file or on the screen. So Jenkins is no different. We are going to use this as an example for our to demonstrate what Jenkins can do. So let's wait no longer. Let's have a look at our example system. So here we are in the Ubuntu directory that we have created previously in this class, and we are using Vagrant in order to access this Vagrant machine, Vagrant command, followed by SSH, and now we are inside our Ubuntu machine. And if you remember from last section, we said that Jenkins has a lot of options when it comes to installation. It can be installed in various ways. In this example, or in this section, I have chosen the standalone service. So this is Ubuntu, and if we issue the command systemctl status Jenkins, we're gonna see that Jenkins service is started. So that means that we can access Jenkins from the GUI. So let's do just that. And from localhost 8888 and from localhost 8888, which, if you remember, is the forwarded port from the Vagrant machine to the host, to the Mac where I am installing Vagrant. If I want to access the 8080 port on Vagrant machine, I will have to use the 8888 port on the host machine. It's just a port forwarding thing. Most important thing is that I am on the Jenkins page. And let's start by creating a new job. So I'm gonna click on create new job in here, and let's say that we want a job that is going to be printing the hello world message. So let's give it a descriptive name like hello world, just like that. Select freestyle project by clicking on this icon here and click OK. Once you click OK, you delve into the details of the job. The first of which is the description. Let's say it's actually important to add a description for the jobs, because as time goes and as you have more and more jobs available, you're gonna see that it is very important that you have some distinction between each job and the other, and simply adding a descriptive project name or job name may or may not be enough. So it is highly recommended that you type a description, a short description for each job. So let's write just one here. A job for printing hello world phrase to a file. I guess that is a fair description for the job at hand. Now, for the time being, we can just ignore the other options here and go straight to the build section of this page. The build is where you're actually going to build your job, and a build here refers to the action that you're gonna take to make this job work. So if I click on this add build step, I will have three options. Okay, so let's choose execute shell. You also have execute windows bash command, and that is if you are running on a Windows machine. In our case, we are running on an Ubuntu Linux, so let's choose execute shell. And execute shell will give you this window in which you can write either the name of a script. If you have your script stored somewhere on your system, you can give the path of this script, or you can just write the commands that you wanted to be executed. I'm going to echo hello world phrase and redirect the output to a file that is going to be created if it is not already there. And let's call this file hello-jenkins.txt. That's it. That's our first job. That is our first execute shell. And as a matter of fact, I can add other build steps as long as I need. I can add more steps here just for the logical separation of the steps or the commands that I want to execute. And once done, I'm gonna click save. Okay. And once you click save, go back to the dashboard and you're gonna find that you will have here the job name with some icons and with some labels that we're gonna have a look at later. Let's first go to our shell and let's have a look at /temp. You're gonna find that we have here a hello Jenkins.txt. If we get it to see the contents, you're gonna see that it has hello world. Congratulations, you have just executed your first Jenkins job. And if you return back to the dashboard, you're gonna see that it has successfully ran. And that brings us to the end of this lecture. See you next. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a new lecture in your course Beginning Jenkins by Eduonix. My name is Ahmed, and in this section of the class we are discussing the foundations of Jenkins. In the previous lecture we have started our first Jenkins job. It did something that is fairly easy, that is fairly simple, which is just printing the hello world phrase to a file on the /temp directory on our system. Let's look at what else can be done in the job. If you want to edit any of the job properties, if you want to add a build action, if you want to change any of the options that you have created in the job, just click on the job name like this, and at the left hand side of this column you're gonna see that we have a button at the end which is called configure. Click on configure. This will bring you right inside the configuration page that you were editing when you first started the job, when you first created the job. Now, in the last lecture we have seen how we can execute a shell command or a number of commands in this window in the build section when we choose a build step that is an execute shell. Okay, let's now see the post build actions. The post build actions is where you can add an action that is going to be executed once this job is done, once this job is finished. So one of the most important actions that most people like to add as a post build action is to send an email to the concerned parties or to the concerned persons when the job is done. So an email to be sent after the job is done, or in case some problem happened or a failure occurred while the job was executing, should be added as a post build action. But as you can see here, the options that are available to me does not include anything that is related to emails. That is because in this version of Jenkins you will have to add this as a plugin, and that brings us to the concept of plugins. I'm gonna leave this page. Jenkins is asking me to confirm whether or not I want to leave this page because I might have unsaved changes. And let's have a look at plugins. Let's first discuss the concept of plugins. Plugins in Jenkins are very important. They control a lot of aspects of Jenkins. They control a lot of the things that Jenkins can do. If you want to install plugins, you have a couple of options. First, you go to Manage Jenkins here on the left hand side, and this is the main settings page for Jenkins. You can have a lot of configurations done from this page, and you are going to click on this button or this link, Manage Plugins, and remove, disable, or enable plugins that can extend the functionality of Jenkins. Let's click on that. And as you can see here, you have those tabs. These are the updates, which means if you have any plugins installed and they need to be updated, they will be listed here. Then the most important tab is the available. These are the available plugins in the repository. In order to view these plugins, Jenkins must connect to the internet, must connect to the website, and grab a list of the latest plugins that are available. As you can see here, we have a long list of plugins, a lot of plugins. They are so long that you can just browse them. You will have to enter a word or two in this filter in order to narrow down your results in order to pinpoint the plugin that you need to install. Once installed, it will appear in the installed plugins, as you can see here. Because we have no plugins installed so far, then there are no plugins in the install tab. Finally, we have the advanced tab, and the advanced tab is very important for two things. First is that you can specify if you are using a proxy server, and using a proxy server is a very common scenario when you are working in a large enterprise where access to the internet is controlled through a firewall and through a proxy server. So you will have to enter the proxy details. As you can see here, it's very straightforward and it's very self-explanatory. You enter the IP address or the name of the server, the port. Then if this server requires an authentication, you're going to enter the username and the password that the system administrator has given to you. And you can instruct even the proxy like you do in the browser in Firefox or Internet Explorer, when you specify that no proxy host should be specified for a number of URLs. You can do that here. That is the first function of the advanced tab. The second function is that you can upload a plugin. You might be asking, should you upload a plugin manually? Well, sometimes access to the internet is completely prohibited. Sometimes you may be working in an enterprise that is putting Jenkins in a closed local area network that has no access to the internet whatsoever. Neither through a proxy, neither through a firewall. It's just restricted. So in that case, you can go and download the plugin from the website directly. You can just download the file, and once you download the file, it's called a .hpi, as you can see here. It's downloaded in this format, and once you download this file, you can just click on that, choose the file, or browse if you are in a different browser, and you can immediately select the file, upload it, and it's going to be installed the same way it's installed using the method that we're going to discuss, which is right through the internet. So let's go to available plugins in here. And the plugin that we are interested in is called Email Extension Plugin. Just write email, and as you can see here, as soon as you type anything in this box, the results get filtered out. This is very handy. You don't even need to click a button or to hit the enter key. Just type in your search string and it's going to be filtered out automatically. So this is the plugin that I'm looking for, Email Extension Plugin. Allows to configure every aspect of email notifications. When an email is sent, who should receive it, and what the email says. I need that, so I'm going to install without restart. And notice here that you have another option, which is download now and install after restart. This option can be used if you want just to download the plugin and not activate it. It's going to be activated automatically when you restart the Jenkins service or the Jenkins server. So I'm going to choose the first option, which is install without restart, and that will download and install the plugin immediately. And as you can see here, each plugin may or may not have some dependencies. Dependencies means other plugins that have to be installed prior to installing the plugin in place. So in our case here, as you can see, to install the email extension plugin, some other plugins need to be installed for this to work. As you can see here, Jenkins is taking care of this for you. It is installing all the plugins that need to be available to the system before the email extension plugin can be activated. So let's wait for a few seconds till the installation is complete. Okay, everything is successful. Now go back to the top page. And we can now go to Hello World again, which is the job that we were configuring. Let's click on Configure. And now we can add a post build action. As you can see here, I have new options available to the post build section. And that is an amazing feature of Jenkins. As you can see, plugins control each and every aspect of Jenkins. It can add new options, new buttons, new configuration options, and so on. So in our case, I'm gonna select an email notification. And here I can add the recipients that I want to receive emails once the job is done. So let's say I want to send an email to this person whenever this job is run. And I can uncheck this option, send email for every unstable build, and send separate emails to individuals who broke the build. If you have a look here, whenever you have something that you feel that it's new or needs some understanding, you can click on this question mark. As you can see here, question marks are abundant in the interface. Whenever there is an option, almost all options will have this question mark next to them. Let's click on this, for example. Okay, as you can see here, this option is checked. The notification email will be sent to individuals who have committed changes for a broken build by assuming that those changes broke the build. This is just a way to inform users that the changes that they have made to the job have broken the build. If you remember from a previous lecture here in this section, we said that continuous integration is all about not letting the project stay overnight with a broken build. If something is broken, if some change broke the project, broke the application, whatever the code was written, it does not build anymore. It experiences bugs or failures. This failure has to be solved. This bug has to be eliminated, and the project has to be built successfully. It should not stay overnight with this status. So an email that will be sent to users who made changes and those changes broke the build may be a good option to be chosen. So let's click on that and then click save. And notice here that you can add more post-build actions. Of course, you cannot send more than one email notification, so it's dimmed out, but you can add other post-build actions. Let's save that for now. And that won't work unless you configure the email, or in other words, configure the SMTP server for emails to be sent. If you're not familiar with SMTP, SMTP is short for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. SMTP refers sometimes to the server or the machine that is responsible for delivering emails to the recipients. So if you want Jenkins to send emails for you or for the users whom are interested in receiving emails for the jobs that ran and the jobs that broke, have a look at Manage Jenkins. And because we installed the email extension plugin, you will have here a new option that is added. Just go to Configure System, okay, and scroll down till you find the extended email notification. As you can see here, this section has been added because we have installed the extended email notification plugin. If we did not install that plugin, this section won't be available for you. As you can see here, it has a lot of options, the most important of which, of course, is the SMTP server. You will have to enter here the SMTP server name. Let's say, for example, that you are using the one that is provided by Gmail, for example. And let's say that this is the default subject. As you can see here, it uses Jenkins variables, and we're going to have a look at them later on. But they are, for the moment, they are just self-explanatory. So this is a project name. It's gonna be resolved to the project name when the email is sent, the build number, and the build status, whether or not the build was successful or not. Then this is just the subject line. Then the content, the project name again, and the build number and the build status. Check console output at build URL to view results. This is the URL that the user can just click on if it's clickable, or just copy and paste it in the browser to view the results of the build. And some servers, and Gmail included of course, requires you to use SMTP authentication. SMTP authentication means that you will have to be authenticated. You have to enter the username and password in order to be able to use the SMTP server, in order to use the mail server to send emails for you. For that, you will have to enter your credentials, like say, for example, your username at gmail.com, and then your password, whatever that was. And for Gmail specifically, you will have to use SSL, and the port is 465 if that is not changed. Okay, and once done, you can save this configuration, and this will make sure that you receive emails, or the people in the list that has been specified here. Let's go again. You can specify multiple recipients here separated by white spaces. So I can, for example, say John Doe at hotmail.com. Both of those users are going to receive mails regarding this job. And then bring this to the end of this lecture. My name is Ahmed, and see you next. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a new lecture in your course, Beginning Jenkins by Eduonix. My name is Ahmed, and in this section we are discussing some of the foundations of Jenkins. In the previous lectures, we have created our first job in Jenkins. It was a fairly easy job. It was just used for writing the phrase "Hello World," which is a very famous phrase in programming tutorials and books. we just created a job that will write hello world phrase to a file, that the file will be placed under the /temp directory of our system. Now let's have a look at the job results. How can you interpret the job results, whether or not the job has finished successfully or not? Once you run the job, or if you scheduled it to run at a specific time, and we are going to discuss this in more detail later in this section, you may want to see the results of running it and whether or not it was successful at all. At the dashboard, you will see an icon next to each job you create. This icon represents the status of the job after it ran. So if you have a look here at the dashboard, you're going to see that I have here an icon, and I also have a description: build stability, no recent builds failed. And I have here the sunny icon. However, if this job has been executed more than once, and I have 20 to 40% of the recent builds failed, I will have an icon like this one, partly cloudy. This means that 20 to 40% of the recent builds failed. If more than that, if more than 40%, up to 60% of the recent builds failed, I will have a cloudy icon like this one you see. If I have more than 60%, up to 80% of recent builds failed, I have cloudy and also rainy icon, the one that you see. And if all recent builds failed, I'll have this lightning icon, which means that all the recent builds failed, all the jobs has failed. So what does that mean? As we have just mentioned, the job may be executed more than once, and that is very common if you use the scheduled job option of Jenkins, which runs the job on a scheduled basis, and this is one of the most common uses of Jenkins. So this dashboard is going to examine the results of recent builds or the recent executions of the job, and according to those percentages, it will give you an appropriate icon so that you can just spot quickly the status of the job instead of having to read the numbers and figure out how many of the jobs failed or how bad the job status is. A quick look at this icon, whether it's sunny up to rainy or having lightning and thunder and all those bad weather signs, this means that you have a serious problem with the job. And you may also want to examine any possible output that was printed to the screen as a result of running the job. Perhaps a descriptive error message that will help you determine why the job failed. So let's say that your job outputs an output to the screen or prints something to the screen. Most of the commands in Linux will print something to the screen, and you can even program the script if you have a script that will build something or that will compile something on the system. You may program this script to display a descriptive message to the user detailing if something wrong happened or how to correct failure that the script experienced. So how can you view the output of the command or the output of the script? This can be easily done by hovering over the job number in the dashboard and clicking on the console outputs. Let's have a look at how to do this. So here we are on our dashboard, and if you go here to this job number, this is the number of builds that this job has gone through. So far it has gone through 2 builds because I ran one manually. If I hover on this icon and I click on this button, I will see that I have here an icon that is called console output. Once I click on that, I will go inside this page that will detail what happened when the job was executed. As you can see here, it is telling you some valuable information already. It's telling you that it is building in a workspace at /var/lib/jenkins/workspace/hello world. This is the home directory of the job. This is where the job gets executed. And Jenkins has created a temporary file or a temporary script file that starts with Jenkins and has this random number.sh, and that is the script that got executed on the system. This is the debug level view of the bash script. If you are familiar with bash script, you will notice how this works. It's just, if you are familiar with bash script or the Bourne shell scripting, you will notice that -xe is giving you a debug view of the script. It is detailing each and every command that ran on the system. So I have here echo hello world, and it's telling you that it finished successfully. There were no errors. It's just printed hello world to the file. Now in the coming lecture, we're going to have a look at a more complex job. We are going to use the scheduled jobs capability of Jenkins. We are also going to write a slightly more complex script So until then, see you next. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Ahmad again for Eduonix, and this is beginning Jenkins section 3. In this section, we are having some of the foundations of Jenkins. We are going to build upon those foundations in later sections of this class. In the previous lectures, we have created our first ever job in Jenkins. It was a fairly easy job that just printed the phrase hello world in a file under /temp of our sample system or our Ubuntu system. Let's have a slightly more complex job that is going to demonstrate some of the more powers of Jenkins and what Jenkins is capable of doing. In this example, we'll create a job that takes periodic backups from a directory on the system. Say that this directory is called /temp/important. Imagine that this directory is really important, as the name suggests, and it contains important files and directories that need to be backed up on a periodic basis. The hardest part of the whole thing is the script that will be used to do the job. The rest is just instructing Jenkins to do it on periodic basis. So let's have a look at how the script would look like. First, we need to create a tar archive for the directory. If you're not familiar with a tar archive is just a way of grouping files and directories together in a file, and this file has the extension of .tar. Sometimes this file is compressed, and most commonly it is compressed using the gzip command. So it's very common to see files that are ending in .tar.gz. This means that these are tar files that have been compressed using the gzip command. Of course, gzip is not the only compression method available. You can use whatever compression tool or command that you need. However, they are most commonly used together, tar and gz. Okay, so this can be done using a command like as follows. Let's have a look at the system and examine this practically. So the first thing we're going to do is that we are going to create a directory that we are assuming that it contains our important files and directories. Let's call this directory important, and because it's important, it has to contain some files. So far it is empty, so I'm gonna just create a very simple for loop that is going to create files from 1 to 10. Okay, I'm sorry. If you're not familiar with Bash, this is just a for loop that is going to create 10 files numbered from 1 to 10. As you can see, these just are empty files that will demonstrate that this directory is not empty and it has to be backed up on a periodic basis. So that was the first step. Let's go back to our home directory and say that we want to take a backup in a tar archive of this directory. A command could be as follows: tar is the command in Linux that is used to create tar archives, -cvf for create a file and give me the verbose output. Then I'm going to point to the location where the file is going to be created. So I'm going to create this file under /temp. I'm going to call it backup.tar, and the next parameter of the command is the target directory that is going to be backed up. In our case, it's /temp/important, just like that. And if I press enter, as you can see here, and because I have chosen the verbose output, tar is giving me the output of what it's doing. It is creating a file that is called /temp/backup.tar, and this file includes all the files that I have created under /temp/important. Now, if I have a look at /temp, I'm going to see that I have a file that is called backup.tar, and it has been created using bigrent user. Okay, so since I want to take periodic backups of this directory, it is meaningless that I name all the files with the same name, because this will simply mean that every file gets created is going to overwrite the previous version of the file. If I want to take periodic backups, it's much more efficient to have several versions of the backup. So perhaps I want to have a backup for today, a backup for tomorrow, a backup for the day after, and so on, so that I have a history of the files that have been created in this important directory. And if one of the backups even gets lost, I could restore most of the files from a previous backup. So it is a more efficient option. So in order to do that, I will have to create files with different names in order not to overwrite each other's. So one of the ways that I can do that is I can attach a string that describes the current timestamp. In other words, I can adjust the date of today, the year, the year, the month, the day, the hour, the minute, and the second, and that way I will ensure that each and every file that gets created will never have the same name as its previous file. This way I can ensure that I can create as much files as I need, or as much backups as I need. So let's clear the screen, and let's say that I want Linux to display the current date for me. This can be done by using a command like this, date, and then the plus sign, and then dollar sign, and then the percentage sign, Y for year, then another percentage sign, and M in small case for the month, and then percentage sign, and D for the day. Then I can add optionally an underscore just to separate the date from the time, hour, minute, and second. Now so press enter. As you can see here, I have 2017-07 for the month. It's July 29, and it's 22, 23, 22 is the hour, so it's 10:23 and 10 seconds p.m. So that can be a good timestamp. I can attach that to the name of the file, and then I can have several files for the backup with different names so that they do not overwrite each other. With that in mind, let's go to our Jenkins dashboard. Okay, and let's create a new item. Of course, it's a new job, and let's call this job important underscore backup. Okay, let's click on freestyle project and click on OK to go to the configuration page of the file of the job. And here I can add a description, a periodic backup of /temp/important, or whatever descriptive description you should add. Okay, now let's add a build step, execute shell, and this is the command or the steps that I'm going to write in order to create several files, each with a different name. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a variable for the timestamp, and I'm going to instruct bash, which is the shell, to display the date, or to write the current date in the format that I have just shown you on the system. So it's year, month, day, underscore, hour, minute, and second, okay, in uppercase. Then I can use this name to create a /temp/backup.tar from, and then I can add, before .tar, I can add the timestamp that I have just created. And if you're not familiar with bash or with shell scripting, if I want to refer to a variable, I will have to prefix it with a $, just like this. So in order to refer to the stamp that contains now the current date and time in the format that I have just specified, I'll have to use a $, just like that. So it's /temp/backup dot the timestamp.tar. That will be the name of the file. Then finally, I will have to specify the name or the path of the file system of the file or of the directory that needs to be backed up. In our case, it's /temp/important. And I can add an extra step here, which is to compress the tar file. So I now have an idea about the name of the file because I have just created it in the previous step. I'm looking for a file that is going to be placed under /temp, and it is called /temp/backup/ dot the timestamp that I've just created .tar. So the gzip command is going to take this file and compress it, adding .gz to the end of the file automatically. Okay, so now I can add a post build action if I want to. I can send emails to the concerned parties if I want to. I'm not going to do that for now. However, since I want this job to run periodically, I will have to instruct Jenkins that I need this. This is configured in the build triggers section of the page. I have here a section that is called build triggers, and build triggers have an option that is called build periodically. Build periodically allows you to run the job on a periodic basis, as the name suggests. And if you are familiar with the cron job in Linux, this is very similar to cron jobs. Cron job is the way in which Linux schedules jobs. Jenkins offers the same format for scheduling jobs. It basically has 5 fields. The minute, I'm just gonna write them like that in a, of course this is not the format that is gonna be used. I'm just gonna write it for you, for your reference. So it's minute, hour, day, or day of months as is sometimes called, then the month itself, then the day of week. So how can this be interpreted? Let's say an example. If I type 0, 5, this means that this job is going to be run at 5 a.m. 5 in the morning. That is because I used 5. If I want it to be run at 5 p.m., I will have to use 17, which is the 24-hour format of writing time. And this is the way cron jobs are written, and this is also the way Jenkins jobs are written. You will have to use a 24-hour format. So let's say I want to run it at 5 a.m. exactly. Jenkins needs to know which days do you want this job to run. Perhaps I want to run this job every day at 5 a.m. sharp. So I'm going to write an asterisk in the place of the day of the month. And Jenkins also wants to know when do you want to run this job, at which month. I can, for example, write that I need this to run every day at 5 a.m. only at January. So I'm going to write 1, which stands for January of the year. Of course, it makes no sense to choose a day of the week because I have chosen to run this job every day. So I'm going to just write an asterisk in the place of the day of the week. However, if I specified a day of the week, let's say for example 2, this means that this job is going to be run every day at 5 a.m. of the January month of each year only if that day was Tuesday. That is because the day of the week in cron jobs and in Jenkins jobs starts at 1, which is Monday, then Tuesday, 2, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on until Sunday, which is 0 or 6. So if I write here 0 or 6, this means that I want this to be run on Sunday. Okay, so that is how cron jobs work, and that is also how Jenkins jobs work. So let's say that I want this job to run at 33, minute 33, and hour 22 of each day of each month of each day of the week. Let's just remove this comment, and once you leave this box, it is going to automatically give you a description of what you have just written. As you can see here, will last have run at Friday, July 28, 2017 at 10:33 p.m. with next run at Saturday, July 29, 2017 at 10:33:06 p.m. UTC, which is, if you have a look here, it is just a few seconds away. That is why I chose that date, to demonstrate for you that it's gonna run periodically. Now let's save, and let's just wait for the time to get to 10:33. Okay, now it's 10:33. Let's have a look at /temp. And as you can see here, we have, okay, seems like we have a problem here with the format, but that's okay. We have here a backup file that has been created exactly at 10:33. It has a timestamp, but perhaps the timestamp here is malformed for some reason or another, and it's ending in .tar. Let's have a look at our dashboard to see the status of the job. And as you can see here, we have a rainy icon. This means that this job has completed, but not successfully. And as we learned, let's have a look at the console output to see the changes or the errors that happened. Okay, as you can see here, I have here 2 problems. I forgot to add the percentage sign to the year, so this way it did not add the year. And I have also mistyped the important directory name. So let's quickly correct those changes, to correct those bugs. Go to configure. Okay, and in here I will have to add percentage sign for the year, and I'll have to also put a T in here, important. And let's have a look at the current date and time. It's 22:35, so let's make this 22:36 to run at 10:36 sharp. Now let's save and let's wait. Okay, and now it's past 10:36. Let's have a look again at /temp. Okay, and as you can see here, we have a successful file name. As you can see, backup dot, this is the timestamp that we have chosen, .tar.gz. This means that the job is successful. Now let's have a look at our dashboard. And as you can see here, the icon has changed from a rainy to a cloudy. Why? This is because I have built stability one of the last two builds. So one of the last two builds is good, the other one is bad, or it has failed. So as you can see here, it's very easy to spot the errors or the failures from the icon. Just with a quick look at the icon, you can see that whether the overall status of the job is good or bad. So sunny is the best, and of course the cloud that has lightning means that everything has failed. And between this and that, you will have different icons as we have just shown previously in this section. And that brings us to the end of this lecture. In the coming lecture, we're going to start by reviewing some of more options that can be added to the periodic jobs in Jenkins. Until then, see you next. Hello everyone, welcome. This is a new lecture in your course, Beginning Jenkins by Eduonix. My name is Ahmed, and in this section we are having a look at the foundations of Jenkins, upon which we are going to build the rest of our class. So in the previous lecture, we have seen how we can create a periodic job that is going to take a backup of a directory that we have pretended to be an important one. We called it /temp/important, and we have configured Jenkins to run this backup job exactly at 22:36 or 10:36 p.m. every day of every month of every weekday. However, Jenkins has more to offer when it comes to periodic jobs. So for example, I can have a range of values to be added here instead of a single value. So for example, I say I want this job to run at 22 from 0 to, let's say, 15. This means that it's going to run at 10, exactly 10 sharp, 10:01, 10:02, all the way till 10:15. So each and every minute of 10, from 10:00 or 10 sharp till 10:15 p.m., this job is going to be run. Or I can do it here. So I want this job to run at 10 and 11 p.m. Or I can have a slightly more range, let's say from 20 to 23. This means that I want this job to run from 8 p.m. till 11 p.m. So each start of the hour, it's going to run at 8, 9, 10, and 11. So this dash gives me a range in any of the fields. I can also add a slash, and a slash means that I want it to run every value. So for example, I can add here an asterisk over 5. This means that I want this job to run every 5 minutes starting at 10. So as long as the hour is 10 and the minute is 5, so it's 10:05, 10:10, 10:15, 10:20, 10:25, and so on. This job is going to be run every 5 minutes as long as the hour is 10. If I wanted to run every 5 minutes indefinitely, I would just have to put an asterisk in the place of this hour. So this means that I will run this job, and if you have a tab, this means that this is going to run every 5 minutes. So have a look at the description. Would last have run on Saturday, July 29, 2017 at 10:40, and would next run on Saturday, July 29, 2017 at 10:45. As you can see here, it is going to run every 5 minutes. If I change the hour to be 23, for example, click tab in order to see the description. As you can see here, it's going to run only when the hour is 11. Okay, so I can also add a range before this instead of this asterisk. So I can, for example, say that I want it to run every 5 minutes only when the minute is from 0 to 30. This means that the job is going to run at July 29, 2017 exactly at 11. And it's going to run at 11:05, 11:10, 11:15, all the way till 30. Once the minute is not 30, this job is not going to run. So as you can see here, I can combine the range with the slash. And finally, I can add discrete values. So for example, I can say that I want to run this job at 0 or 11 sharp, and at 11:13, for example, and at 11:23. Of course, this gives me no change here, because in all cases it's going to run at 11, so I can change this, for example, to be, I want it to run at 11:03. This means that it's going to run at 11:03, then at 11:13 and 11:23, only when the hour is 11. If I change this to be an asterisk, this means that it's going to run every hour as long as the minute is 3, 13, or 23. And the last and the most important thing here is the hash. To understand the hash, consider the example that we have just added, or a more simple example. Let's say I want a job to run every day at 10 a.m. of every day of every month or every day of the week. If I click enter, if I click tab in order to exit from the box and have a look at the description, have a look at this warning. Spread load evenly by using H10 asterisk 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 rather than the values that I have just added, which is 0, 10 asterisk asterisk asterisk. So what does that mean? Jenkins is suggesting that you add a hash instead of the minute. Why? That is because you may have a number of jobs that are all running at that same period. So I might be having, like for example, 5 jobs. All of them are scheduled to run at 10 a.m. sharp. If those jobs are CPU hungry, in other words, if those jobs are highly consuming the resources, this means that the system is going to be overloaded at that time. So Jenkins has a very handy way of handling this. If you add an H instead of the minute, this means that Jenkins will still run the jobs at 10, but it won't be necessarily at 10 sharp. It's gonna run one at 10:00, another one at 10:03 or 0:10 or 15. So if I click the tab, for example, as you can see here, it gave me a random value. It's gonna run the job at Sunday, July 30, 2017 at 10:19 a.m. So as you can see here, H has been replaced with 19. Okay, so that is why Jenkins is suggesting that you use the H, and H is short for a hash. And that brings us to the end of this lecture. In the coming lecture, we're gonna have a brief look at how Jenkins handles security. So see you next. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a new lecture in your course, Beginning Jenkins by Eduonix. My name is Ahmed and this is section 3 of the class. In this lecture, we are going to introduce Jenkins security. Just a brief introduction. You can configure global settings that govern how Jenkins works security-wise by clicking on the Configure Global Security from the dashboard. Let's have a look at that on our example system. So in here, let's leave this periodic job. Let's go to Jenkins, and yes, I want to leave this page without saving my changes. And let's have a look at Manage Jenkins, Configure Global Security. Configure Global Security has a number of options that will govern how Jenkins works security-wise. Let's have a look at the most important ones, or the introductory ones for the time being. The first one, as you can see here, is Disable Remember. You can just ignore this TCP port for GNLP agents for the moment. If you have a look at Disable Remember Me, let's first see what happens if I log out of the system. Okay, I'm going to have to add admin, and I will have to get the password from the initial password that has been created for me. And notice here this button. If I click on Remember Me on this computer, I won't be asked for a password again unless I intentionally log out. So if I log in, and then no matter how long I stay on the system, as long as I did not press that log out button here, I'm going to stay logged in. Okay. However, sometimes you may need to disable this functionality for more security. So if I go here and I click on Disable Remember Me, okay, and I click Save. If I logged out now and try to log in again, as you can see here, the button is no longer available. Okay, so let's return it back to the way it was. And let's have a look at our second option. The second option here, or the second section of the security, is access control. Access control have a security realm and it has an authorization. The security realm is how you want to authenticate users to the system. So we have two options, either to delegate to servlet container or to use Jenkins' own user database. If you want to delegate to servlet container like this, you will have to configure the container to give access to the users to these URLs. And in order to elaborate on this, delegate to servlet container means that you want the container of the servlet, if you have installed Jenkins in a WebSphere or a Tomcat or a WebLogic container or JBoss or any other Java container, you will need to, users are going to be authenticated to Jenkins once they get authenticated to the container. Or in other words, the container is the one which is responsible for authenticating users to Jenkins. And in that case, you will have to configure the servlet container to allow access to the following URLs without having to ask the user for his or her credentials. Okay, let's leave it at Jenkins' own user database. We're going to use Jenkins' own user database for the authentication. Now let's have a look at the authorization. The authorization here, as you can see, is divided by default into three options. You can either make it loose, like anyone can do anything on the system, the legacy mode, or logged in users can do anything. Of course, this is not the most secure way of handling users on the system, and we're gonna see in a moment how we can make this more secure. Let's leave it at that option for the moment. Let's click Save, and let's go to Users. In order to create users on the system, from Manage Jenkins, let's have a look here at this icon, Manage Users, near the end of the page, Manage Users. I'm gonna click on it, and of course I have the default admin user, which is the administrator of the system. I can add a user by clicking on Create User. Let's add a username, password, confirm the password, add the full name and the email, and click on Create User. Once you create a user, now you have two users in the system. One is the admin, which is currently logged in, and one is called Ahmed. Okay, so how can you give this user access to the system, or how can you control this user's access to the system? As for the time being, if you have a look at Configure Global Security, you're gonna find that logged in users can do anything. Of course, that is not the optimum situation. You will have to fine-grain the control that the users have. So for that, there is a plugin that we're gonna install in order to handle this for us. So let's go to Manage Jenkins again, Manage Plugins, go to the Available, and from the Available, I'm gonna write Matrix, and I'm gonna choose Matrix Authorization Strategy plugin. Check on that. And if you wish to, you can have a look at the description. Offers matrix-based security authorization strategies, global and per project. That is exactly what we need. I'm going to click on Install without restart. And as you can see here, it has got a lot of prerequisites. Most of them are already pre-installed. So it's not going to take time to get installed. As you can see here, it is successfully installed. Let's go back to the top page. And again, I'm going to have a look at Manage Jenkins. Configure Global Security. This time I'm gonna see that I have more options available, and that is one of the best features of Jenkins, which is that it is highly modular. Plugins control each and every aspect of the system. It can configure a lot of the functionality of Jenkins. It can add a lot of new functionality. So as you can see here, I have a new option that is called Matrix-based security. So I can just skip this option, logged in users can do anything. I want more control over the system, so I'm going to choose matrix-based or matrix-based security. And the first thing I'm going to do, and the first thing that you have to do if you choose this option, is to choose or to add admin to the matrix like this, because admin, if you just save it like this, admin will not have any access to the system. So I'm going to click on this shortcut here in order to give the checkbox to every option here in the matrix. I'm gonna save it. Okay, and let's get inside again, configure global security. And let's add, for example, the user that we have just created, which is Ahmed. And now, as you can see, we have fine-grained control over what this user can exactly do. So he can be an administrator, administer, read, build, configure, connect, create, delete. This is the agent part, the job part, run, view, SCM. SCM is going to be discussed later. And I can give this user access, for example, to the job and only to the job. Build, cancel, configure, create, delete, discover, read, workspace. That's it, no more. Okay. That way, if I logged in with this user, I will have limited actions than the administrator. But what about the project-based matrix authorization strategy that is here? This will give you even more fine-grained control over how you use the system or how the users are authorized to use the system. As you can see here, once you select that, you will have to add admin like that in order to give the current user full access to the system and not to be locked out. Let's save. And once done, you can configure the authorization of users not by the global security, but per project, as the name suggests. So I'm going to go to Jenkins dashboard, and I'm going to click on any of the jobs that I have. Let's say, for example, I'm going to click on important backup, configure to go inside the configuration page of the job, and I'm gonna see here that I have a new option that appeared here, which is enable project-based security. This is a new option that has been added when you installed the plugin. So let's click on that, and this will allow me to add a user. Let's say, for example, Ahmed, add, and this user can be handled authorization per this project. So I can, for example, give Ahmed full access to this project and only this project. Compare that to the access that this user had using the global security matrix, which had, for example, the read permission or the configure permission on all the jobs on the system. This gives you even more control over the system because this user has these permissions only on this job. He has no permissions on any other jobs on the system. So you can also click on this block inheritance of global authorization matrix. Let's see what this means. Let's save first and let's go to our dashboard, manage Jenkins, configure global security, and because you have chosen project-based matrix authorization strategy, I can add here Ahmed like that. And again, I can give this user full access to everything on the system. I can do that. However, if I did that, click save, and go back to the job, important backup, and configure. Now, perhaps I want this user not to have access to this job. I want him to have access to all the jobs on the system except for this one. But notice here that this user is already inheriting global authorization matrix. So I'm not giving this user access to the job, but this user is already inheriting global authorization matrix. He's already having every permission on all the jobs on the system. So in this situation, I can click on this checkbox to block inheritance of global authorization matrix, and this way this user will not have access to this job. He can have access to every job on the system except this one because he has no access, and I have blocked his inheritance from the global authorization matrix. However, and as the Jenkins page suggests here, because the parent ACL for access control list will not be inherited, it is possible to revoke your own configuration access accidentally. If you enable this setting, please also remember to grant yourself or your group configuration access so that you do not lock yourself out of the job. This means that if you are the user that is configuring this job, if you are not admin, if you are Ahmed, then make sure that you give yourself at least configure option here. Let's leave it. And that is, of course, because if you block inheritance and you don't have a configure option clicked on here, you will lock yourself out of this job. You will no longer be able to do any changes to this job. So as you can see here, this is a brief introduction to the Jenkins security, the users, the authorization, and the authentication. I guess by now you have a grasp foundation of Jenkins. You created your first job, you created your first periodic job or scheduled job. That brings us to the end of this section. My name is Ahmed, and see you next section.